Daniel, I had a Boss DS-1 once. It was awful.
Well, Michael, I think you need to rethink the thinking part of your thinking. Wow! What was that peeking at?
Didn't even look.
Do we know? Wow. Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello. Genuinely the first time we'd heard that. We'd done all the pre-show level testing with only one amp, so we turned them both on. And that was the first time we'd been blessed with both amps.
So good. So good.
That was killer.
Quickens the blood, Michael. Quickens the blood.
It does. It does.
Some housekeeping first of all. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And a massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed some t-shirts. We have some new t-shirts in.
We do. We've got
There's a flying
beast as well that wants to buy t-shirts from thatpedalshowstore.com. We've got new colourways in fuzz. We've got a new orange thing with knobs on.
Orange thing with knobs on.
So please, yeah, That Pedal Show Store, please go there. It's how we fund the show, and we're very grateful for anyone who buys stuff. Thank
Indeed.
you.
Let's jump in. I saw something on the interweb where Boss had sold 1.5 million DS-1 pedals. And I'm like, hang on, what? So I looked it up. Crybaby sold 1 million. The Metal Zone has sold 1 million. The DS-1 has sold 1.5 million, right? And it's completely blown my mind. Now, we haven't turned a DS-1 on for years. And so I wanted to have a look at it and look at a little bit of the history of it and why it has become such a, successful and appeared on so many recordings and favoured by so many artists.
Yeah.
So I want to have a look at that, get to grips with the sounds of it, compare it to the Rat, which was also very popular around the same time, and some different amps.
Yeah, here into two classic amps, because as you will know if you're a regular viewer of TPS, the same pedal can sound radically different into two different amps. So we've got two very different amps for that exact purpose. Wish that Fly would go and have a happy life somewhere else.
It's going to annoy you.
No. It's going to have a happy life somewhere else. It did actually land on one of us, didn't it, in a video once?
Did it?
Yeah, we're on a farm, so flies are part of the game, I'm afraid, on the farm. Yeah, so massively successful, much loved, and yet somewhat ignored since the pedal revolution spat out 58 bazillion different distortion pedals.
Yep, totally.
Be good if we had a time machine, Dan.
Be good.
And we could go back to what year?
1978.
It's almost unimaginable.
The bell bottoms, the amount of
I made some notes.
Recreational activities.
So Boss released this in 78, and it was their second compact pedal.
It was. So they had the first 3 compact pedals they released.
Yeah.
They had the Phaser, the Spectrum, and the OD1.
Sorry, their second compact distortion or overdrive is what I meant to say.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
So I made notes.
Oh, great.
Yeah. But I just wanted to get this right because I've been fascinated with designers and engineers lately, right? Now, Boss can't tell us exactly who designed the DS-1, but Kanji Kudo and Yasuyuki Yamada were 2 engineers working at the time, and they definitely at least had a big hand in it if they didn't do everything. Now, we were very fortunate enough a few years ago to head to Japan and go and meet a bunch of the guys at Boss. And there's, some of the engineers, certainly one engineer from 1980 is still working there. And
Well, Yoshi, top man.
Yoshi was, the top man was putting together
Space Echoes.
Yeah, so they've got a history of their designers, staying on because they do such great work and they're all so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So, 1978.
I want to hit you some facts of 1978.
What was going on in 1978?
Well, here are some albums and records, singles and albums that were out in 78. Take a Chance on Me by ABBA.
Take a Chance does. I just think of Alan Partridge.
Take a Chance, isn't it? Mull of Kintyre.
Okay.
Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Summer Nights.
Wings, the band the Beatles could have been.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was Wings.
Yeah.
Summer Nights. The year 78 was really all about the film Grease.
Man, I heard that on the radio the other day.
Yeah.
Check that out.
Yeah.
Right? All recorded live. Those guys are tight as a very, very tight thing.
Well, our chum, Mr. Timmons, Andy Timmons, played for Olivia Newton-John for years, didn't he?
He was her musical director.
Here we are, tangenting already.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all bad news. Rumours.
Okay.
Fleetwood Mac. Van Halen, of course. Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy. Hemispheres by Rush. And Dire Straits. So, always think, when we're saying, this pedal came out in 1978, it's always worth a quick look at what was happening.
Definitely.
Mazda RX-7 debuted.
The rotary engine.
The Saab, the Wankel rotary engine, which makes me laugh. The Saab 900, and lest we forget the Citroen Visa. All of which information came from Wikipedia, so if it's wrong, blame you, not me.
Citroen Visa's not going to do much good now, post-Brexit. But anyway.
So I just think culturally it's super interesting.
The bands that you mentioned there, like Thin Lizzy and Van Halen and stuff, are really important thing to recognise about all those bands.
Yeah.
Loud.
Yeah.
And we hadn't... I mean, you go to a rock gig in 1978, you're expected to be pummeled against the back of the wall. That was what was happening.
Yeah.
So when Boss released this in 1978, it was designed to work with what was happening with players at the time. If you think of, we're talking about a lot with fuzz, right? And how fuzz is a pedal that once you've reached a certain level of playing, because it's so dynamic and it's informed so much about the how sensitive you are and the volume controls and all that sort of stuff. Distortion's different. Distortion doesn't rely so heavily on...
It's an important comparison, isn't it? Because again, if you think contextually, MXR Distortion Plus 74?
Yeah, mid-70s.
Mid-70s, somewhere like that. But really, the predominant overdrive and distortion devices of the time, up until that point, were basically fuzz boxes, weren't they?
They were.
Which, as you say, is quite a different thing than what we now understand as the modern distortion or overdrive pedal.
So what people were looking for was something a bit more controlled. So they could have that, they wanted their volume, but they didn't want these unruly, obviously we love fuzz, but they wanted something a bit tighter.
I don't know what would have been popular at that time. A lot of silver face Fenders around.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I don't know, JC series amps, all the stuff that your sort of normal average guitar player would be using.
Sure.
May not be a crank Marshall stack.
Right.
So if you want to sound like Scott Gorham or Eddie Van Halen whoever it was at that time, certainly for everyday people who wanted guitar sounds, that's just not available.
Sure. Bingo. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's have a listen to it. I've got a bunch of different guitars. We'll start with, we've got the one on the right, the DS-1 is from 1980, April 1980. And they went through a couple of different design changes. We'll get to that in a minute, but let's just have a listen to a Strat and a Les Paul going into, start with the Marshall.
I'm just trying to get my head around that pedal's 42 years old nearly.
Yeah. And same colour as the one next to it, which is from last year.
Anyway, I'll okay. Marshall first, Dan?
Let's go with the Marshall first.
Okay, we keep turning them on and off because they are a little bit overdrivey, which means lots of background noise.
Sure.
Oh, and just before we get going, the Marshall is attenuated by the minimum amount it can be attenuated by.
Right.
I can't see, I've got my glasses on. Nothing does that mid-range like a cranked traditional Marshall.
No.
Let's turn this on then.
All right. Okay, so immediately, what strikes me with the Strat, and with the Les Paul as well, is it doesn't sound compressed. You're still hearing front edge of the note, and that was the big thing. Like when you look at the waveform of the DS-1, it's meant to work with an amplifier that's already got a bit of love going behind it, so that it doesn't sound like you're still hearing the front edge of the note.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that DS-1 does so brilliantly.
It really does. It's funnily enough, before we hit go today, I put on a couple of tracks while we were setting up. And certainly a couple from Paul Gilbert. And I don't know if he uses the DS-1 or has used the DS-1 or not. Very famous users include Vai,
Satriani,
Kurt Cobain. Look up the DS-1 on Wikipedia and you'll get the list, but a huge number of super famous people have used it over the years. Whether Paul Gilbert did or didn't, I don't know. But it's that edge.
Yeah.
That edge of when you can do precise picking. It really does leap out, doesn't it? The edge of the
Totally.
note.
And so we'll show you how that works. So we're going to go now to the Deluxe. I'm going to turn the Deluxe down to start with.
Yeah.
So we're going to use the exact same sound, right? I'm not going to touch anything. and we're going to hear that sound into a clean deluxe.
Yeah,
and
okay.
we'll hear what that sounds like.
We'll pick up some more guitars as we go. Just one observation before we move on. It's really interesting bearing in mind that conversation we had about fuzz before, because there are elements of the bottom end that get a bit fuzzy.
Well, so interestingly, the EQ is sort of similar to a big muff in that way. Right?
Okay.
It's got depending on where the tone control is, it sort of scoops some of those mids out.
Yeah.
And, put some love, I've got to stop saying love in the bottom end, but it accentuates some of those frequencies. The thing that's different, though, is that, and we'll hear in a second, is what's going on with the upper frequencies with the distortion.
I meant as much about the clipping characteristic.
Sure.
Because it's hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a hard clipper.
There's nothing super like soft and nice about it. It's like edge.
Yep. Let's stick the deluxe on and we'll have a listen. Okay. I'll turn it down to 3.5. So
I might have to do some knob twiddling, Dan.
Right,
so
right.
let us hear the deluxe.
All good?
Nice deluxe reverb. Just to give you some context there, here's how that would sound with the Strat. Totally lacking in mid-range, which the Les Paul puts back. Hopefully you'll hear that. Just play that a sec, Dan.
Right, so, black panel deluxe sound, sort of mid-scoopy, lovely. Haven't touched the pedal, right? Here's the same pedal that we had going into...
I'll do it while you're playing, Dan.
Oh, okay. Now, of all the amazing guitar sounds we've had on the show, that's not one of them.
It's a sound.
It's a sound.
It is a sound. But yeah, it's a little underwhelming. It seems to make the amp actually get quieter, whereas when we kicked it on with the Marshall, it was like
fat and massive.
Hello.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn the Deluxe up. I'm going to touch anything else, leave the pedal where it is, and I turn the Deluxe up to about 6.5. Yeah.
Now I always make this caveat about the Deluxe Reverb. Some of your Deluxe Reverbs, it's currently on
3.5.
3.5. Some of your Deluxe Reverbs will be almost approaching overdrive by this point. Some don't. I don't know whether it's what's in V1 or whether it's a pot taper thing. Try not to focus too much on the numbers. There is a point where all Deluxe Reverbs go from meh to overdriving and mid-rangey and really nice. Dan is going to, in fact, you play, I'll turn it up and you'll hear where that happens.
love, baby, it's love.
I'm just going to take a couple dB out of the mic preamps.
Oh, man, so good. Okay.
Different beast, isn't it?
Different beast.
Different beast.
And now... I think it's amazing that not just the different, obviously how the pedal is working with limiting the amplifier, but suddenly it sounds fat, whereas before when you kicked it on, it seemed to close down.
It's really, really fascinating, that. Really fascinating. And certainly would explain why, you know, back to the top of the show, why have we ignored the DS-1 over the years? The reason I've ignored it is like everybody else probably, when, certainly if you're of our basic generation. We Gen Xers, Dan? Is that what we are, more or less?
Gen Xers.
When there weren't that many pedals around, you probably went through all the Arian distortions that were available, all the Boss ones that were available, and some of the MXR ones. There weren't that many available.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember doing what we just did, because I used twins.
Right.
And I never had them, you know, I had them on sort of 4-ish, because that was a good headroomy place. This sounds a bit rubbish and thin.
Right.
Don't like this at all.
Right.
Next.
Yeah.
Hence ending up with a
Tube Screamer.
Well, Tube Screamer or an OD3 or, you know, something like that.
Okay. Right. So very interesting. If you think of the Deluxe when we first started was like your really loud twins.
Yeah.
Yeah. You sit that on and it's fizzy and harsh. So it's really designed to work with an amp that's got something else going on.
A little bit.
You know, it's got to be going to something that's limiting. And if it is going to something that's limiting, it can be magic.
It really is.
So I remember, you know, when I first started playing with Tin Spirits, and Dave Gregory had this unbelievable solo sound. And I'm like, what's going on there? And it was his old DS-1.
Hey. That's for Dave.
And it's like going into the EF86 channel of his Matchless turned up.
Yeah.
Just heavenly. So, but the reason that works is that what we heard in the Deluxe, if it didn't do that, if it didn't have that sharp edge that made it sound harsh and awful, then it wouldn't work into the cranked amp.
Yeah.
You know, which is why today, when we look at distortion pedals like, you know, you go to the Governor and all the variants thereof, it has like built-in compression into it, so it will work. Those pedals, those they got what they call amp in a box type pedals, will work into a cleaner amplifier.
Yeah.
But that into a cranked amplifier, I mean, it just sounds magic.
Okay, I think what we should do, should we have both amps on and just set them up to a nice place? We really do want to hear the difference between the old one and the new one.
Yep.
And then some context with the Rat.
Yep.
I'm super interested. The new one that you're about to hear, I think I bought that from Anderton's maybe last year.
Yes.
We were going to do something back then, never got round to it, so it's been sat in a box. So it is a 2020, I guess.
So there's 40 years between those two pedals.
That is astounding.
Amazing.
Astounding. I'm going to put this down because I'm not loving it. I'm not going to disrespect this guitar anymore. Regular viewers of the show will know I don't know how to play these things. But I just, you know, for this,
yeah, of course,
it was good to hear it. I also turned the volume down a bit. I'm about as rock as a tree, I'm afraid, so I did my best. Interesting. Okay, different bottom end response in the both of them. More bottom end in the old one.
Right.
Different mid range.
Yep.
That one sounded, for want of a better term, fuzzier to me.
Okay.
And the mid range was in a different place in the new one. What were you hearing?
I think that extra bottom end stuff makes it feel a bit warmer.
Yeah.
The old one. I mean, they're really close.
They are
like surprisingly close, considering
closer than I thought.
How different those circuits are.
Yeah, because this is all modern surface mount, tiny
little surface mount components.
Yeah.
You know, the original one that's using that's pre-op amp in the gain stage. It uses an old Toshiba preamp chip, like an inline preamp chip.
Yeah, I mean, we probably should have said that at the top. Interesting about the DS-1 that it's got 2 gain stages correctly.
Well, you've got the input and output buffer like you do on all Boss pedals.
Yeah.
Then from there it goes into after that initial buffer, it goes into it's like a booster stage, like a transistor booster stage, and that's before it hits the clipping stage.
Okay.
And the clipping stage in the original one's done with that preamp.
Yeah.
Which then goes to two back-to-back diodes. After 94, that's when they stopped using the old preamp inline and then went to the op amp.
Okay.
Stuff. Interestingly enough, that first after it goes to that first buffer stage, before it hits the clipping stage, it goes through that like a transistor booster stage, and it boosts the signal a huge amount. It's something like 30 plus dB of gain,
right,
before it hits the clipping stage.
Yeah. That is kind of interesting, because I definitely hear once it's crazy loud like that, it'd be super interesting to hear the audio back. It's so loud in here, I don't know what I'm listening to, but there is a splutteryness to the overdrive, especially on the low strings, I guess, which comes out in that extra bottom end response. And I wonder if a criticism of the DS-1 over the years is that it's got too much bottom end.
So one of the things that people love about the DS-1 is it's so easy to mod.
Right.
So if it's too much bottom end, if you'd rather have asymmetrical clipping, if you'd rather have more mids, there are really simple things that you could do with the circuit.
That one's easy to mod.
That one's easy to mod.
That one not so much.
You can't. You can't mod those at all. So, but over the years, you've had Analog Man and Keeley and JHS and a bunch of other guys and girls do mods to their DS-1 to be able to tweak them to get them to sound the way they want them to work with their rigs. So that's a really cool thing about the old ones, is that you can mod them. So if your rig was the Marshall and the particular guitar, and you loved the way it felt, but you thought, it's a bit thick, change your capacitor value.
Yeah.
That's no problem to work out what that capacitor value is.
I think we should nod with appreciation at Dan's 61 Les Paul there, Les Paul Jr. That is a really spectacular guitar, and it just always sounds immense.
It does.
20 years before the, almost 20 years before the DS, before our DS-1.
Well, another interesting thing though, I mean, I think I'm not sure what the output pickups of the Gem, but they're not really high output.
It's a Gem Junior, so I think a lot of the Gem people are like, oh no, but it's a Gem Junior.
Yeah.
If you want to check the specs.
But because of that boosted transistor stage, you need to be careful about hitting it with too much input.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much. It's too much. Because then things can get a bit out of control when it starts, because it'll amplify so much that you can go beyond the rails.
I was feeling that certainly on the bottom strings on the Gem there.
Right.
It's like really lovely dying amp mush, which I kind of like, but you might not like if you like it a bit more together. Actually, I thought the Gem sounded pretty decent.
It sounds great.
Yeah. No, I don't mean that as pejoratively against the guitar. I mean it pejoratively against me. I struggle to play those sorts of guitars, but just,
I actually think you're a really good rock player because of your time.
I don't know any of them.
I do. I think it's great.
I only know blues notes, I'm afraid. Okay. I think then let's hear it in the context with the Rat, shall we?
Yeah.
Well, one final thing on what we just did. I did have at one point the distortion at 0. One thing we talk about a lot, one thing that we should talk about more with pedals is, maybe this is a subject for a whole other show, but that output control, the master volume control, is a significant tone shaper as well.
Absolutely.
And having the if you get your desired distortion level and then you view the master control at just how loud you want it, it's not the whole story.
No.
Because the tonality does change significantly when you really whack that master up.
It does. And also, depending on the design of the pedal, sometimes when the master volume is sort of right at the end, after any buffer stage, then it'll change the output impedance as well and change everything again. Right. So, it all depends on the... one thing about the bus having the input and the output buffers is that consistency thing like we talked about.
Yeah.
So that's the one great thing about that.
Like we talked about in the last episode.
But no, you're absolutely right. Understanding that, the master volume will change things as well.
I think that might be an element of why, if your experience with a pedal like this has been slightly negative, it might be that you've got the master really low and the gain really high and you're just like, whoa, Fizz City.
Yeah.
Actually, if you reverse that relationship and just belt the amp with it, so the amp gives in a bit, you might have a slightly nicer time, just as a suggestion.
Indeed. Okay, so what we'll do now, I want to turn the Deluxe down again.
Yeah.
Just so that we can hear the difference between the DS-1 and the Rat. But then we'll turn the Deluxe back up.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, and then so that it's like, it'll make a bit more sense about the DS-1, where that sits, if that makes sense.
Okay, back down to just under 4 on the Deluxe then.
Okay, lovely.
Nice. Just give it a whack for me a sec, can you?
Now let's have a listen to the Rat. So, of course, you hear that, right? And you go,
what's happening there?
Exactly.
Just prove to me that there isn't something wrong here. Can I just hear that into the Marshall?
Yes, of course.
Sorry, bit of a tangent. That is totally mind-blowing. If you didn't follow, hopefully I made it clear on screen what was happening, but we turned the DS-1 on into the Fender and it just went, and all the mid-range was gone and all the volume was gone and it just sounded fizzy and thin. I mean, it wasn't a nasty sound, but it was just fizzy and thin and not very loud. And into the Marshall, that was, what's that, a complete absence of mid-frequency or something?
Yeah, so I can't, if we go to the Marshall and everything's overdriving really nicely, pretty much across the board, all the frequencies.
Yeah.
If I try and boost that with all the mids that the Rat's got, so if we think about the frequency of the DS-1 with that scoopiness going on, when I push that into the Marshall, it gives me extra top end, it gives me thick bottom end, and it all sounds big. If what I'm trying to do is push that mid frequency into the Marshall, it's got nowhere to go.
Mm.
If I then take away bottom end, like with the Rat, it's just like all I'm trying to do is overdrive the mids more in that. I'm not going to get any level from it. However, if I then put the Rat into a mid scoopy amplifier and bring those mids back up, it's like, oh wow, listen to that.
But even with the level control round at full on the DS1, it still wasn't giving the Deluxe any love.
Because they're not loud. The DS1 isn't loud.
That's madness.
Depending on which version you get, some are louder than others, but certainly the original ones when were not crazy loud. So if you heard that, if you put the DS1 and the Rat side by side into a clean Fender amplifier,
no contest.
There's no contest, right? You're going to say Rat every day of the week. Let's now put the Deluxe back up to where it was.
So we were just below 4. We're now going to go back up to 6.
Yep.
Here's how that sounds. So many things to say. All those people that argue online for hours and hours and hours that pedal distortion is much worse than amp distortion. It's a whole new light on that whole debate, isn't it?
It is fascinating.
It is an ecosystem. It's a symbiotic relationship between the two devices.
Exactly that.
One of them is out of kilter. Forget about it.
Exactly. But what I love is in 1978, they were designing a pedal to work with an amplifier set like that. All the stuff about, getting your sounds specifically from pedals and stuff with really big clean amplifiers. I mean, it's definitely a thing. And think of the high watts and stuff that happened back then. It's great, but those amps were still run loud and they still had character.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the DS1 into a really sparkly clean amplifier is always going to be hard work. However, into an amplifier that's got some love going can be magic. The last thing I want to do...
Oh, there's a couple of things I want to do, but yeah, go on.
I want to turn the Deluxe down.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the Rat set up to a point where it sounds nice, and I'm going to boost into the Rat with the DS1.
Okay.
All right?
My God!
That was amazing. That was actually amazing.
I just wanted to hear this into it with all that extra top end.
But you slipped into something there, sort of a almost a droney rhythm thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like the way it works with the sound. It was just beautiful, really beautiful.
That was killer. That was really unusual. I think we should finish off with a couple different guitars.
Okay.
Come on then.
DS1's rubbish.
Hey? Oh man, that was so interesting.
Yeah. So it shows you a lot of people like to use it as a boost.
Yeah, right.
Just as a boost. The way that those edges work as a boost and that, front end of the note, magic.
Apart from all the amp hiss, I mean, it was a passable jazz tone on the neck pickup of the Casino there.
It cleans up beautifully.
with the DS-1 on.
Yeah, totally.
So, really, so much more versatile than I would have ever thought. It does make me want to plug the old Maxon SD9 back in now with a different appreciation of where it might sit. Yeah. And isn't that interesting? All this stuff has existed for so many years now, and I think it's very easy to write it off as something that you don't like or that didn't work for you in a certain scenario, and lo and behold, you try it in a different scenario with a bunch of different things, and all of a sudden it's much more workable than you thought it originally was.
Yeah.
No great surprise there, other than when you sat here listening to it, it's exactly that. It's a massive surprise.
And with the amp turned a bit cleaner, it's like that's a horrific mess, and then all we did was turn the amp up. It was like everything makes sense. Yeah, it's wonderful.
It just underlines that whole ethos. Well, what do we always say on TPS? There's no answers, only better questions.
Indeed.
The amp that you're pairing your pedal with makes an enormous difference.
It's everything.
And viewing that as a make louder device purely is bonkers. It's equally part of the tone ecosystem as anything else. You, the guitar, the pedals, everything else. Nothing new there, just worth reiterating.
Yeah, magic.
Cool, mate. Thanks for that. That was an education, I have to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and nice to play really, really, really loud.
Really loud. really loud. Thank you everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. A massive thank you to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is
Anderson's Music of Guildford, Surrey, where I bought that DS-1.
Nice. And our dear friends in Australia.
Would be Pedal Empire of Brisbane, Queensland.
And we do have links for our friends in America.
We do. If you click on the links below, they go to sweetwater.com. If you use one of those links and you buy stuff, Dan and I get a kickback off that, and it helps us fund this show. Thank you.
Indeed. Massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support.
Indeed, you also help us fund this show.
Indeed. And of course, to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed some of the new merch we have.
We should have All You Need Is a DS-1, really, but All You Need Is Fuzz will do.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.